G'day, doing another test batch. If anyone saw my Beersmith video, probably realise I've been doing test batches, and it's more about flow for the Robobrew, or I guess these sort of things can work in any system, but it's just trying to maximise the flow through the grain bed. I've tried different screens and things for the bottom of the Robobrew, and today I'm going to try wet conditioning the grain, or conditioning the grain. Wet conditioning for grain has been around 19th century or maybe earlier for bread and stuff. And the idea is you just lightly moisten, I should say, the grain. The husks get a bit more leathery rather than so brittle, and so when you mill them, the husks are more likely to stay intact, which is what you want for your grain bed filtration. It will be a good test today because I've run out of rice hulls. It's exactly the same grain bill I'm using that I've done for my other, I know this is test batch number 5, but the hop hog was virtually the same grain bill too, so it's sort of test batch number 6. It's 4.5 kilo of ale malt, Gladfield ale malt, and 140 grams of Simpson's Dark Crystal, and that's it. Now the idea is you use about 2% of grain weight to your water. That makes sense? So with 5 kilo of grain, it'll be 100 ml of water. I'm using just under 5 kilo, 4.64 kilo of grain, so it's supposed to be 92 or something like that. It's close to that. Brain's not working, it's early. Anyway, 2% of your grain weight, you add water. Now you want a mister, like that is the best way. And to do your grain in batches, like maybe a kilo or so, and spray it, give it a mix, add another, is probably better than trying just to stick it in from the top of a bucket all at once and stirring it up. So we'll give it a go, and we'll see how the crush ends up. And a good way to do it, as anyone's read about it, I think everyone sort of does it this way. It's hard to put like 100 ml in the bottom of a bottle and expect to get it all out, especially when you're spraying like that. So what a lot of people do is put water in a spray bottle like this and weigh it, and then have a few sprays, mix it in, and then weigh your bottle and just see how you're going and get an idea. So water's easy in metric anyway. 100 mils is 100 grams. So there's my grain. I'm just going to put in, I know that's roughly a kilo just because I know. Give it a few sprays and a mix. Probably should be using a spoon. That was about 10 mil, I just weighed before. That'll do. Some more in. More in. I've used about 75 mil so far, and there's only a tiny bit of grain left, so that's turned out pretty well. It's only supposed to be 92 mil with what I've got, something like that. Just mixing the top times, try and make sure I get that grain I've just put in wet. And I'll just go and weigh the water again. Alright, I'm there, so I don't have to add any more. I'll just give it a good stir. Now before you mill, you don't want to go and chuck it in your mill straight away. You want to leave it 10 or 15 minutes. If it's hot, you might want to cover it so you don't get too much evaporation, although I'm pretty sure these grains will soak it up pretty quick. But what happens is, it's probably not straight away now, you can sometimes feel the difference in the grain. Like originally it might be really dry and brittle. Some of the descriptors I've seen used, like it goes a bit leathery. But that's what you want. Alright, I'm going to leave this for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, something like that, and then we'll grind it, or mill it, and we'll see what happens. So it's been 15 minutes, and you can feel the difference in the grain straight away. It even just sounds different rubbing against each other. Not so dry and brittle. I'll put in the mill, eh? Now it would be good to test a little bit first and see how it goes. And I'd advise people do that. But if it is too wet and your mill gums up, just grab a little handful of dry grain and put it through. And even the volume seems bigger because it's absorbed that water. It's missed a bit. It seems to be taking up more of the mill than usual, this amount. Whoop. So there we go. Also reminded how much tougher it is to mill. Turn the torque up on your drills. Just need a breather from this. I could have also put the bucket with the grain on a scale, all in one, and added the water, stirred, and just kept an eye on how much it weighed as well. That's another way. Back to it. Oh, nearly there. It's hard work. Now I remember why I don't wet condition all the time. I need a drill or a motor of some sort. Alright, we're done. Still puffing. As you can see, it didn't clog up my mill at all. The rollers are nice and clear. So that's a good sign too. Now, I can immediately see the difference to my usual crush. I'll try and put a photo up of my usual crush. But you can see there how much of the grain husk is whole still. And every grain is crushed. There's nowhere near as much dust. And way more fully intact grain. Now I didn't adjust my malt mill. I wanted to keep the same mill for the test. And we'll try and do a side by side with these. But that's an awesome crush. Really is worth doing. Every time if you can work it into your brew day. And there's one thing I forgot to mention at the start. You're much less likely to get dough balls when you use this method too. So I'm going to try and punch it in pretty fast, this mash, instead of going slow like I do sometimes. That's why I put the foil around. I haven't been doing it lately, but I have to take my time then. I want to get this in pretty fast. My water's up to 71. I'm going for about a 64, 65 mash. Celsius, of course. I best turn the temperature down and turn the pump off. Alright, let's get it in. Oops, that was a lot. Anyway. That was probably a bit too much that last batch for my liking, but anyway. Oops, geez, I shouldn't have done that. That's what you got to try not to do. That probably just lifted up the bottom then. Try not to bash your centre pipe. Now see, that is pretty good. Still got a bit of wetting to do, but as you can see, for the amount I've chucked in, there really isn't dough balls. There was the odds one, but compared to if I had done that normally with dry grain, there would have been a lot more. Get this out of the way. But there is hardly, well, at the moment I'm struggling to find any. There's probably some very small ones. What time is 25 past 10. I'm just going to let that settle in for 10 minutes before I put the pump on. Five minutes, 10 minutes. Make sure it's all nice and wet. It's looking pretty good. If I didn't mention before, it's 18 litres I used at the start. You could go a little bit more. I know some people go a lot less, and man, it must be thick at the start. That's 4.64 kilo of grain and 18 litres of water. Alright, so we'll go at, I just collect 30 seconds worth and then weigh it. Should have went then. Normally it's been somewhere between 750 and 900. I think I might get a little bit more this time. I think my finger's going to get burnt if I don't move it. Alright, it's 30 seconds. Yes, that does look like a lot more than usual. Yeah, that's 930 grams, which is better than what I got with any other methods, including rice hulls. So I wonder if you add rice hulls to that as well, might even improve it more. So that's nearly 2 litres a minute. Just wanted to show you too the lack of dust on top. Normally for a brew I get a heap of dust on top, or powder, and there's virtually none there this time. I'm just going to run some grain through to show you the difference that the wet conditioning made. This is dry, of course. My crush it's on the fine side, but it's not stupidly fine. I've never had a problem in my normal mash tun with stuck sparges, and the only real stuck sparge I had on that Robobrew video was because the grain got between the screens. And the reason it's a little bit fine is because sometimes I use wheat, and the wheat's a smaller grain usually. And if anyone knows that has one of these, you can adjust it on the side, but it's at the moment I've left it there. I usually end up in more trouble adjusting it and have to sit there and put grain through and adjust. So I just sort of leave it where it is because I haven't really had any issues. But anyway, we'll get this grain through. Much easier to grind when it's dry. And there's the grind there. You can see there's a lot more powder.
And although some of the husks are intact, a lot of them are sort of broken in half. Well, most of them are broken in half, looking at that handful. There's a couple of whole ones, but there's a lot more powder, and you can see how the husks are shred a bit more. But there's a lot that are still good. But hopefully you can see the difference that the wet conditioning makes.
Covered in grain dust. But anyway, so I actually got the flow up a bit further than what you saw on that little bit of footage there. I had a mate here and I was going to video it when I got the flow up a little bit more, and I forgot. But so basically I got the flow up to nearly it was probably around 1 litre per 30 seconds. So it's close to 2 litres a minute. Now the only way I've got near that flow with this same crush in the Robobrew was with 200 grams of rice hulls in it. Now 200 grams, that would be about 4% in that grain bill. Yep. I think about the water. The water was 2%, that was 100 grams. So 4% would be 200 grams. So I imagine if you still wanted to use rice hulls, it'd probably come even better. So yeah, I recommend trying it if you haven't. It does make a huge difference to your crush. I just saw the top of my mash bed had virtually no dust, where usually from that same crush with the recircing going through the whole mash, the top of it is covered in dust. That would cause some people's really slow sparges too. But mine looked beautiful at the end of that mash, I'll say that, beautiful. So I don't know, give it a try. It's not hard, it adds 15-20 minutes to a brew day. You can do a bit earlier if you like. I'm not sure, I've never let it dry out again totally and then mashed with it the next day or something. I haven't tried that. Maybe that should be another experiment. But I think it's worth giving it a go. Especially if you're having issues and or you normally use rice hulls and you haven't got any, because my mash ended up with the same flow efficiency through the bed as using 200 grams of rice hulls, which I didn't use this time. Alright, cool. Cheers.